How's it? And welcome back, sports fans. This is Moving the Needle podcast. I'm Andrew Yetling. Thanks for all the support, especially on YouTube. That's been pretty rad. What a week we've had. We've had me signing off on the World Cup series, but a really, really incredible event. And it's gone so mainstream in the last, even decade, I guess, but especially the last few years. And I've roped in a freeride legend who's competed there many a time, as well as in slopestyle. I think he's one of the great voices of freeride mountain biking, and he was on site. Cam McCaul, you've raced back to home, had a good night's sleep, and then I've roped you into this. But I mean, what a whirlwind! I mean, how long were you even there for? Because you covered the women's as well and the men.
Yeah. Yeah. This year was awesome because I was able to be there for longer. I was there for a whole week. And so I was there for the last few build and practice days for the women. And, with both of them going on at the same time, I feel like the event, just having one category, is always such a juggling act for everybody on site. And there are so many different roles out there. And it's got to run like a well-oiled machine to even get one category going. But to see everybody doing twice the amount of work out there, and now to be back home and looking back on it, I think it went really well. Just to see everybody grinding so hard and have all the pieces kind of go together in the puzzle is pretty awesome. But yeah, I was there for all the riding days for the women, all the way through the end of the men's event.
Yeah, from the outside, it looked like a duck on top of water, looking pretty good. But I'm sure it was pretty chaotic under the surface. If you said, because it was two entirely separate venues, right? Two different hills.
Yeah, two entirely different venues. Luckily, they're really close. So talking about all the different roles and the different people who already have a hard time getting their job done and then had to do twice the amount of work. The crew running the water, like Dave Smutok and crew, it was incredible what they set up because they already irrigate the whole venue, which is a feat in itself. But with the two start towers, relatively close together, they were able to have one giant tank at the top and running lines to both of the venues at the same time. And all the riders are told if they bring a big section of hose and, a sprayer, then they'll be able to tie in anywhere they want throughout the hill. Those guys are running around like crazy, just making sure that everybody has the water that they need. But that gives you a little insight into the proximity of the women's venue to the men's venue. They were side by side, and there was a connector trail. So for me, doing my job out there, trying to see absolutely everything I can, I'm such a fan, so I love that. But once I realized that there was a goat path that connected the two tops, then I figured out how to go back and forth and see everything. And I don't know, the best part about being out there is in passing, you just come across people that and you get into a conversation, you learn something because there's so much stuff going on all the time, especially with there being two venues and two categories.
Dude, that sounds intense. Like I was just thinking of the broadcast. They're doing it in the desert. It's literally when they pan away from the start and they pan to just like, I don't know, you might as well be on another planet. And then you're saying, but hang on. There's radio comms, there's satellites, there's broadcast, there's medics, there's personnel. And then you're saying, hey, hang on. Just like a simple feat of getting water up this mountain has to be done for them to build these features. Like, dude, props to everyone that's involved, that lifted a spade, that rode down that mountain, that, I don't know, laid a cable that I can sit on my couch at home and then have this chat about that. That is remarkable.
Yeah, it has to be one of the craziest undertakings in terms of a live event. And add on top of that, how hot it was this year. There has been issues in the past with production gear overheating. There has been an issue in the past with gear starting fire in the middle of the broadcast. And so through all those issues over the years, they figured out, ways to mitigate all these problems. Like I see people running around with ice bags, and I know some of them are being used to cool off computers and hard drives and camera equipment. It was hotter this year, like I say, than it ever has been. It hasn't really switched to fall yet over there. It's still mid 90s as a high in the middle of the day, and wake up in the morning, you still don't really need a sweatshirt. And so that just added to the complexity on a bunch of different fronts. The courses, there's no moisture in the dirt this year. Usually you can get down and get to a little bit. And then usually some of the moisture that you put on the dirt will last for a little while. Everything's drying out so fast, but it looked insane. I was going to say yesterday, but 2 yesterdays ago, morning practice, sun comes up over the mountain that the start towers are on, and everybody riding in for last practice laps, their dust, there's a trail from top to bottom that stayed by the time they get to the bottom of the course, and it's backlit dust. And you're like, who dropped? And you can look up the hill and trace it back and tell whose line it was. It was that one part of it was pretty cool. It would be better if there's a little bit more moisture in the dirt, but it was pretty dramatic looking.
Yeah, man. And speaking of dramatic and just exciting, I mean, why don't we jump straight in? I mean, the women's category being added to Rampage has been a long time coming. You've been, I think, part of some of those formations and whatever those events are called, like getting more free ride events out there, getting these sort of series where people can sort of make a name for themselves. But I mean, props to Rampage, props to the women. I really enjoyed that, seeing what they were able to carve down that mountain, like super unique. And that was a untouched zone from what I could understand, especially on the women's. Like that hadn't been ridden by anyone,
Yeah, I
unless it
think
was like
that
locals, I guess.
for sure. I think that part is important for the women in their first year to be riding a zone that didn't have any recommended routes. There was no revisiting of something that was proven to work. And I think that's the way it has to be. That was the original ethos of the event. And so for the women now, man, 23 years later, to be starting up right where the men did when they were experimenting, but with all the knowledge and techniques of, the past 23 years of learning in the men's side and learning for all the women who go out there and shoot video parts, they bit off a lot. It just, as always, everything looks so much easier on the screen. But my first day walking their venue, I was like, all right, nobody's really phoning it in. And a lot of the stuff that looked easier on screen was steeper when you're actually walking it. And some of the drops were just as big as some of the heavy hitting drops on the men's side. The one that Cammy and Chelsea set up specifically was 51 feet point to point, like real deal. That's a number that is right in there on the men's venue as some of the big hits. We did a lot of measuring this year. In the past, we've been hung up on, really wanting to know what the vertical is, what the horizontal is. We're like, all right, we have just one continuous standard common denominator dimension. It's just takeoff to landing. And so by using that dimension and looking at that 51 number, we're like, yeah, that's right up as big as the men in some cases. And when Cammy guineaed that feature, her tire track went to the 75-foot mark. So they're going big. And I think it was a real big success. You think back a few years ago and Casey Brown, she was like, well, there is no women's category, so whatever, I'll just try to get into the men's. And she was submitting videos and applications just like the men do for consideration. And I am on the selection committee, so I remember that year. And, we just rank her exactly where we would. No bias, not taking into consideration male, female, whatever. And she didn't get an invite, but, she was just trying to get in regardless. She did compete in that year. There was a qualification event here in Oregon called Proving Grounds. She did compete in that, and she was trying to just get in by just charging hard. So the fact that now there's a deep enough field who all were aiming at that same target, to have a field of 8 invited and only one, unfortunately, not start, Cammy. She had that crazy crash in practice. But yeah, a field of 7 drop in. And with Robin winning, I think she's also a really good ambassador. Anybody around the world who gets their first impression of, women's Rampage, looking at Robin, you're like, all right, she dropped into some steep stuff. She did a backflip. She hit a big point-to-point, step down drop. And, she's so good on camera. She's a great character. And her story is like genuinely legit, an amazing story. 5 years in the New Zealand Army. a passion for bike riding, going like, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a shot. She was the first one to win women's slopestyle competition at Crankworks. Now she won Rampage. And yeah, I hope it gets a lot of attention. And in the next few years, if this keeps going at this pace, we'll have some heroes in the women's category that the general fan knows and follows, just like it is in the men's category now after 18 years of events.
Yeah, well said, man. I definitely enjoyed watching that and just looking at the screen going, I wouldn't be touching any of those, even in the heyday of riding. And yeah, it kind of had it all, like you said, at point to point, had steep stuff, and then it had the flip, which was great, right? I mean, you want to have some of this new school trickery that obviously we'll get to in the men. Like, that's really amazing. And as you said, she's really fitting person to take the win. And she doesn't really seem to even care for the limelight either, like in the post interviews and seeing her at Darkfest and things like that. Like, the first few years when they came to that event, I was like, I think they've got the skill. I've said it before. I think they've got, the courage. But sometimes, like, are they going to carry the same speed? Like, is the course going to work for them? And then I was obviously just totally shut up the first year when, they were hitting all these massive, massive jumps. And the same can be said, like you said, they're going 75 feet. Obviously, it went a little bit far, but there's no stopping them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where they are now in their first year of Rampage and how fast they got there. So it's fun to imagine what they're going to be doing in 5 years. It's pretty quick progression, obviously, because just the way our brains work, the way humans are wired. If we see something, we're more likely to be able to do it. That's why I wonder with really convincing AI, if there's going to be some convincing enough artificial videos of humans doing things that humans have actually never done, but then humans the next day will go do it, because that's the way we're wired. But compared to the men's field, how long it took to get to where it is, the women's rate of progression is fast. And you imagine okay, Robin did a midline backflip, super high off the lip, like aggressive. There was a lip down on the course this year that a lot of riders shared. I'm like, Robin could definitely flip that. Casey could have flipped that bottom jump. I know she could have. And so with a year's worth of stewing over the things that you could have done, they'll come back and go that much harder.
Yeah, dude, I've never thought about that. AI. Right? In sports, because that's how we all learn, right? Like, I would get VHS tapes, watch Vores do a bar spin. I was like, right, that's clearly can be done. We'll do that. Obviously on a small scale. That's some scary, dangerous shit. You just open up a can of worms, especially in the sport of mountain biking. That's funny.
But thinking about that. Heavy.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I love where your brain goes. It's always makes for epic conversation. But Casey Brown,
I will say, I really miss 4 times a year going on a trip with you and hanging out. So I'm stoked you gave me a buzz to do
Likewise.
This. I miss you.
Yeah, me too. I miss it so much. And just the random conversations about the event once it's done, or is AI going to... I was wondering where you're going with this AI thing. But if you, as a human, can see it done, then you believe you can do it,
That's how every amazing feat has been accomplished. Well, that's how every, door has been blown open, right? Like, a human does an amazing feat, and then everybody else runs through. And
then why don't we go back to the moon? Why are we not going back to the moon if it's been done? Like, don't we want to go back?
Yeah, exactly. Why are we not on the moon?
How about that cliffhanger?
Did you see that rock? I don't know. I was getting the kids ready to go to school this morning, and the news was on, and I was just walking upstairs. I was like, "What is that? Did you see that rocket come back in and land? Like, it came back down to Earth and
haven't,
landed
but you can send
in
me the clip.
Yeah, I will. I was like, that's insane.
Legit, or is it AI? Is it legit or is it AI?
Maybe it was AI, so then we can pull it off. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, fair enough. Elon will watch it. It probably was him. Anyway, but I mean, Casey Brown's story is great. Like you said, she said, you know what? I've got this dream to get to Rampage, and she was submitting videos, video parts, going to proving grounds. that's really fitting that she landed herself on the podium as well. I mean, she's done so much for women's cycling, mountain biking, and freeride. So
She
to get
has.
her chance to sort of show what she's made of, I think that's incredible. And so inclusive, right? Like the women's field is so inclusive of let's all learn how to get there. They go and do those sort of videos and stuff in the desert. I mean, I guess the men, they don't feel as inclusive, you know. I think it's
What
more
does it feel as
competitive,
inclusive? Oh, I
like the
mean,
men's competition.
yeah, I mean, men's competition, women's competition, whatever. You have to like push through a whole lot of uncomfortable feelings to get there. And I don't know. I think that's probably why you get like, oh yeah, they're like so there's so much camaraderie. And it's because everybody's going through the same thing. And yeah, definitely in the men's field, it's competitive and everybody wants to win. But it is unique how everybody does, genuinely want the other person to stomp their run. They just want to beat that other person too. And I don't know, with $100,000 up for grabs, it's like, as much as everybody talks about the camaraderie and everything, it's like, yeah, but everybody wants to win. And that's why we get such a good show.
I heard you in the booth. I think that was a fair point you made. There is 100 grand on the line, so then all
Yeah.
bets are off.
Yeah, for sure. So many years in the past, it gets windy after first runs, and the decision is made to, cancel second runs. 2013, I think it was the last year that Kyle won. They called the event, and I remember everybody being down at the bottom, and then it got calm, and everybody's like, "Oh man!" And so when I got in my headset, oh yeah, we're going to put it on like an hour and a half wind hold and come back for second runs. I was like, all right, there we go. That makes sense, to see this thing through. And if it's at all possible to get it done today, they're going to try. I thought that was pretty cool. You got to imagine if you're a rider there's my dog. My tortoise is
Awesome.
quieter than my dog. My tortoise is running amok too, but you don't hear anything. If you have your dream run in the can and then you hear that they're going to do a wind hold, you're probably like, how many places am I going to get bumped down? But as a fan, you're like, all right, awesome. I'm going to go for an hour ride, come back. And to finish this thing and not leave any question marks. Obviously, a lot of riders went up for second run and weren't able to drop. But the fact that we did get a couple riders we had Janon drop and then obviously Brandon drop. I'm trying to remember, did we have anybody else take their second run when the 7 went up to go for it? Do you remember?
No, off the top of my head, we had a lot of them just bowing out, which I respect, like depending on your line, the wind. So Whitlock, Eistead said they're happy to stay safe.
Yeah, Adolf
And
too.
they had Adolf, and they had a few guys on their drops call up. They had a few of these key drops or key canyon gaps where they had their builders and even other builders. I mean, I don't want to make that phone call. I mean, you can't be you have to be so conservative about the wind. Like, yeah,
Man.
there's some wind here. You don't want to go, I think it's fine, and then someone drops on a 70, 80-foot canyon jump. So you have to be conservative. So respect to the riders that dropped as well as didn't drop. Like, it's a horrible situation, and like the mental fortitude to go up there after that many hours off your bike and just block all the negative thoughts, block all the doubt of the win, and
For
drop
sure.
in it's just insane. Just the sport. There's other sports that take mental fortitude, but this has got to be up there for what you're
I think
risking,
so.
and with the variable conditions and there's shadows now. Like, it's just totally different.
Obviously, I'm super biased because I think this is the most badass event. But I do think there is some validity to that sentiment because a lot of different sports, you're doing something that you do a lot. In this sport, you train as hard as you can on features that are as similar. But man, there aren't too many times throughout the year in general riding that you paint a top to bottom, hitting features of that size with intent to do tricks of that magnitude. It's just that day, and there's just 2 runs. And the fact that so many riders chose to go up to the top to sit out the wind and you got to be there. You can't not be there. Just have that focus and willingness to go. All the riders who decided not to go once going up to the top, they had all intentions to drop, but live to ride another day, man. If the wind is relentless and it's on a direct perpendicular angle to a 75-foot step down, then the right decisions were made in all those cases.
Yeah, you said an interesting thing. Like, it's only 2 times a year you get to maybe do it in competition and get the reps in, versus other sports. A lot more sports are on a more controlled environment. Even motocross is on a way more controlled environment. The track does vary over practice and things like that. But then you throw in the wind element and the time of your bike. I mean, could you make more uncomfortable like conditions to try perform? Like, I don't even know how you'd make it even worse.
Right. Like, that's why I think it's the most unique and badass sport. Even big wave surfing, which is
okay, that's a good comparison,
how
right?
Can
for like variables.
say that's not right there with the most badass stuff. And there may be circumstances where people will drop for waves on that day that they wouldn't drop otherwise because it's a competition. But I think in that sport, there's such like a hunger to drop on the biggest wave. Even outside of a competition, people are dropping. There may be like at the Eddy or something, a scenario where you're like, and if it's not a contest day, be like, no, I'm not going to do it. And so I guess the comparison I'm making is, what other sport would you go like? And still your objective on a big day at Waimea is like to get the biggest wave. But at Rampage, for somebody like, say, Tom van Steenbergen, if he's going to go out there and do that front flip, he's going to go out there and he's just going to do that front flip. He's going to wait for the perfect conditions. He's going to do as many practice runs as he wants without any distractions or anybody telling him, like, the time is now to go to the top. He'll bite that off like that. Probably not going to do a whole run into it, front flip, and then a whole run out of it. It would just be that thing, in the same way where you would be dropping for that one wave to just get that moment for yourself or the clip. But Rampage is, if you're going to do that big thing, if Tom's front flip is the equivalent of the biggest wave ever dropped into at Waimea Bay, well, you're also doing an entire run before it and an entire run after it. And that is a circumstance it's hard to find a comparison to in any other really high-level badass sport.
It's so difficult. I mean, let us know in the comments. This is a great question. Like, what can we compare and relate the conditions, the magnitude, what you're putting on the line, the variable conditions, like, to Rampage? Yeah, I mean, great question. And I think off the top of your head, yes, big wave surfing.
Big mountain skiing, like natural selection.
Skiing. Yeah, I guess big mountain skiing. I mean, they're going to come to us. We've obviously forgotten. But yeah, maybe like... Yeah. Big mountain skiing is one of them. I think I'd rather, I don't know how to big mountain ski. I think I would rather crash on snow or ice, I guess. There's less ravines and stuff like that. So, Rampage, does Tom van Steenbergen ever try a trick that size outside of Rampage? Like, to me, Rampage has got him to this point of pushing himself to the sheer limits of what he can mentally do. Right? And he talked about visualizing this trick and probably at home for months and years. But
you should get him on the podcast. Yeah.
I'd love to. Especially, I mean, he was obviously quite outspoken and disappointed, which, props to them. If he's put his heart and soul into something, I should get him on. He'd be great.
The preparation that he did for that. The preparation.
Does he do a trick like that away from Rampage? Like, he probably doesn't do a trick like that for a video pod. Not that big. Maybe.
Not that big, right? I mean, he has. I remember, gosh, I was on a shoot with him for TGR and Anthill collab movie. That one was Unreal, is what it was called. And he did like a 70-foot, I think it was in the 70-foot range, double. The aspect ratio of this video is not long enough. I'm like, it was a double like this. Here we go. It was a double like this. Mega long front flip. And so he does, I mean, look at his X Games part. This guy is like on the sharpest edge of pushing the sport. And But I think it's, if you get a goal of something to do in Rampage, especially if you're a Rampage veteran like he is, you know that the pressure is going to be so much higher. If that's the goal, is to front flip that thing, here's like the amount of pressure to go out there and do it for a film project, and here's setting that as your goal for Rampage. Like, we're out of frame now. Like,
Out of screen, out of
and he
YouTube.
knows.
We are above YouTube
Yes.
aspect ratios.
And he knows too. He's not like naive to that. He's not like, once everything's said and done, like, oh wow, that was a lot to bite off. I probably should have just done that for a video part. He knows. He's like, I'm going to do it for Rampage because that is the stage, and that's the highest target you can shoot for, is to link something like that in the context of a full run at Rampage.
Yeah, and he got the full run done. That's one of the gnarliest, if not gnarliest, things we've seen on two wheels.
I would
Right?
very much agree with that. 100%. Just, I mean, I don't know, for people watching at home, because Rampage gets so many eyeballs from people who aren't mountain bikers, if anybody is like, oh gosh, so front flip, back flip, what's the difference? Like, just to give a little bit of context, I know most of the people who are listening to this are mountain bikers, but you land way harder on a front flip than you do on a straight air or a back flip. So if you jump that Price is Right step down, straight air, you land hard. If you flip it, it's so gnarly and it's such a dice roll. You actually land smoother though, which is awesome if you're good at flipping big cliffs. But if you front flip that, even if you front flip a dirt jump, standard size, even like a dirt jump on a slopestyle course, you typically land harder because you have all, your downward force from, gravity pulling you down back to earth, but also that rotation of the front flip is coming around against the landing, and it's just push. So he landed.
Yeah, that inertia is insane.
Yeah, he landed pretty perfect, but he still bounced. Like, you watch that clip, he lands and he bounces and he's going the wrong way. He keeps his eyes up and he rails this berm. That was, I think, my favorite visual from the event. And I was trying to picture, that was Ethan's landing there. If Ethan's landing wasn't there and it was the edge, like, he might have kept going. He would have gone off track, but he just bermed off of that thing. And that was mountain biking right there, wasn't it?
Dude, insane. I mean, just the subconscious skill set that everyone possesses to ride out some of these sketchy moments. It's like, there's no thought, there's no practicing that, there's no getting good at that style of thing. That is just like the subconscious brain telling the fingers when to pull what. Like, it's insane. And as you said, so this front flip, I mean, he mentioned, like, the margin for error is basically zero on a big jump like that. A little bit under rotated, then he slaps the front wheel so hard he probably gets bounced over the front. Over rotate, we all know what's happening there. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. Like, he has to land perfect, which both wheels touching the ground at the same time on a front flip is, I guess, classified as perfect, which he somehow did on the biggest damn drop known to man that you could probably front flip. And then he still bounces, like you guys said in the booth. Like, and he still bounced both wheels off. Dude.
No, it's like, bravo, Tom. Waking up that, I don't know. You hear everybody on the broadcast, whether it's a rider being interviewed or us in the booth or an interview with a dig team member, sleeping at Rampage is wild, even if you're not riding it. I like kind of see every 2 hours, I kind of see them go by, like I look at the clock and I kind of remember what all these people have set up for themselves. And I'm like, and that's like 100-fold for them. So morning of Rampage, waking up and just like, okay, what is today? Oh yeah, it's Rampage Day. What are people doing? Oh yeah. And I remember just like, it's like, oh, my brother. And then, oh, Tom's going to do that. And it's just like, so like getting to the end of the day and a lot of those things working out is just like, oh man, it is pushing things to the limit. And when things are being pushed to the limit, it's only natural to think about the consequences and what would happen if it doesn't work out. And obviously Zink went to the hospital, and that period of time where we don't really know what his condition is, and there's like, yeah, Salema calls it mountain wireless, kind of like similar to on the islands. You know, the way word travels, they call it coconut wireless. So it's just this big game of telephone, and you hear these rumors about the condition of somebody who's getting taken off the mountain, and that's rough, man, because you don't really know what's true or not, and you hear things that are worse than reality. So now, 2 days after finals, to see what his update is, and he's obviously sitting in the hospital with a lot of pain with 6 broken ribs, one of them displaced, but no concussion, no broken back, right where those fractures are, right along the spine. So that's why he was feeling so much pain in his back. But thank goodness, man. It's just, I don't know, you wake up that morning and you're like, all these friends, and in some cases family members, are going to be pushing it that hard right now. Like, what is the story going to be at the end of this day? There's so many unknowns.
It's so heavy, eh? Like, what's the energy like on those events? It must be quite eerie, especially when someone gets carted off. Like, and
Sure.
healing vibes to Zinc, Sea Dog, and the rest that got hurt. Like, it is so heavy. I mean, we're speaking about it post the event, but leading up to it must be pretty gnarly for everyone around, because you, like you said, you kind of you knew Tom was thinking of this front flip. Was he like riding up? Did he talk about it? Like, what's it like at the event? Is it also like Chinese whispers, like, I think he's going to front flip that, maybe? Or has he already announced he will? Like, what is it like?
Yeah, it's like he done that big front flip in 2021. So you already know that's the kind of stuff that he likes to do. And then you talk to you talk to people who are close to it, but some things are so big that it's just like you don't even really want to talk about it to anybody other than the people who already know, you know?
Or you don't even want to talk about it, do you? It's kind of like going up to a racer before his race run. You're just like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing right now. Like, they've got enough going on in their head.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing the right thing to say. I don't know. I find a couple of things. We'll go with this one first, is that a lot of times the riders out there, they just need somebody to talk to. And so the best thing to do is listen. And then if you're somebody who's in a position where you have enough experience where you can offer up some advice, I kind of just go like, if I really see something and I really feel strongly about something, I will volunteer the advice. Otherwise, I'm just going to be, a wall to bounce thoughts and ideas off of, and give feedback that is being asked for. And a lot of times, and I've been in that situation before. It's been a long time, but just knowing that like you're so acutely aware of everything that all of your senses are giving you, and so you're just doing a lot of absorbing of information, and all those subliminal calculations are just happening. And sometimes you vocalize those subliminal calculations. So for the members of the dig team, or close friends who are out there while these riders are calculating, just like be there to have these ideas bounced off of you. But also, the riders are so much better now with that process, because a lot of the riders in the field are veterans. And even the riders who are rookies have learned from the veterans and learned from what they've already done to get to this point. So I think there's a whole lot less like fucking send it and hope for the best. There's a whole lot of calculation now. And so because of that, cruising around riders the day before the event or right before the event, there's less panic and more just anxiety and readiness to just go. Like, can we just get there already? And that's good. And that gives you confidence. And watching riders be so dialed in practice, knowing that they've prepared, you're less nervous for them as well, because you trust the process and you believe it's going to work. And that's nice now as compared to maybe 10 years ago. And the format has changed so much with mandatory rest days and the promise that the event will never be moved earlier. So the riders can trust that the things that are out of their control, there's rules set in place to make it so it's not going to just be like, surprise, you're dropping it for finals tomorrow 3 days early,
Yeah, that makes sense that everyone is so much more prepared. There's more knowledge, there's more experience up there, and then even the rookies are be able to sort of absorb that like sponges. Maybe Whitlock, like riding the area that's where he's from, was it one of them, like, so the first runs in Rampage, often there's a lot of crashes. I don't know, just off the top of my head. I haven't got the stats to back it up. And then this Rampage, I was like, run ticked off, run ticked off, run ticked off. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Obviously, Semnick had an issue and things like that. But I was like really amazed at how well these riders had defined their runs and obviously practice and the build teams. Like, it's all those things coming together, which was really, really, like, I think that's understated, like how impressive it is that so many guys had good first runs.
Yeah, the
And
formula.
that goes to your point, like there's less hucking your meat out there, you know?
Yeah, the formula is established and the formula is followed, and it's that formula has been concocted over so many years, and even the rookies can learn from the vets and follow that formula. And it's so much. It's two things. It's so much crazier than it's ever been, but it's also so much more calculated than it's ever been. And there's a whole lot less riders showing up on finals day with massive question marks. 90% of the field have done their line top to bottom. Maybe 85% of the field have done their line top to bottom. There was 2 riders who hadn't done features in their line still on finals day, which is like, that's just going to create so much anxiety. But they both rose to the occasion. And there used to be a whole lot less preparation, not because there was less willingness to prepare, but just less knowledge of how to prepare.
Yeah, and is there ever a time, or is it just too costly to have a proper weather window? And correct me if I'm wrong. Like, if there was so much wind on that day, would they have run it the next day? Like in surfing, like a weather window to, because this event, there's so much building that goes in, so much preparation, and then imagine it's just windy for those 2 days or days. Like, is there a weather window like that they
There
could run
is,
the
yeah.
next day and
So
maybe the next day? Like, would they keep pushing it within reason?
yeah, I mean, they would keep pushing it, but there is a point where it would just get canceled. So that's why the women's final was on Thursday, the men's final was on Saturday. So Friday would have been the weather day for the women's event, and then Sunday would have been the weather day for the men's event.
Okay, that makes sense. No, then they are trying their best, but I mean, everyone in the comments like, we need weather windows. It's like, yeah, and we need a bunch more money and resources, and like it's not as easy as a surf comp, you know.
Yeah,
So
which I'm sure surf comps aren't easy either. I'm sure it's insane.
no, they some have like a month weather window, but like that industry's been like that forever. I mean,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard some could have up to a month, because if you're going to fly them out to Tahiti, like you want to make sure the event eventually runs. So that's
Yeah.
like just a whole different thing. But all right, there's obviously elephants in the room here / dogs, but as a whole, I just want the comment section to just like come in with respect. Cam and I both know the judges. We both know a lot of the riders. I mean, one of them happens to be your brother. Like, we are here. I'm just sitting observing, say, the comment section, and you shouldn't always read all the comments. But the internet certainly has voiced, I think, what they feel Rampage is, what they feel it's going towards. For you, how do you define Rampage? And is it at the point we should like redefine it and make sure everyone's really aware what it is? Or is that like trying to stop AI? Like it's just evolving and we can't put it back in the box?
Right. I mean,
And you're allowed to have like your subjective opinions. And I know you work for the organization and you're in the booth.
no,
so,
none of that,
like,
none of that bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, none of that bullshit. I honestly think that line choice is a huge one. Amplitude is a huge one. I think maybe this year they weren't treated as huge as they should be as categories that are important. And I haven't dug into all the comments, and so I'm sure there's a big variety of a bunch of things being said out there, but I was surprised when Brandon went into the lead. I think that the way he rode that line was, God, it was amazing for sure. but
Yeah.
the line itself wasn't as gnarly as a lot of the lines out there. And I think if you're going to win with a line that isn't the gnarliest, well, then yeah, you're going to have to do some amazing stuff. Apparently, in the judge's eyes, he did stuff that was amazing enough to where it overshadowed bigger features with tricks or really unique features. Um, it is a tough one, but um, I will say that I was surprised when he went into the lead.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Like you say, you have invested interest, but I was also a bit surprised, and he almost seemed surprised. Like we're just speaking about what we see. We're allowed some opinions here. He did seem surprised. He is phenomenal. He's won the event 4 times prior, now 5. Like he is arguably the goat of freeride, but freeride as well as slopestyle. You're not just slopestyle. Like he has done so much for the sport, and he also seemed a little surprised. And he mentioned he didn't build and go down like the biggest features, but he had that gnarly section where he had to land like on a lily pad and then go again. Like he said, he knew the consequence of that, and it was either perfect or he's having like a biggest crash of his life probably. So he was risking a hell of a lot, which people maybe couldn't see either. So there was that. So yeah, so that was super interesting, and it was amazing to see him like go up there and say, I'm doing this for my dig team. I'm doing this for myself. Like I didn't want to go out with making a mistake on one of my smaller tricks. So I think fair to you. I was also a little bit surprised, and that was maybe the tough thing is the communication that came away from the judging was amplitude, and then there was a bit of contradiction, which obviously fuels the flame for the comments and fuels the internet. And even
For
for me,
sure.
I'm like, in years prior, amplitude was scored very heavily, as in high. And then this year, you're kind of contradicting yourself.
I think
Like
so too. Yeah.
in
I
years
mean,
past, like Tom would have won with the like world's first craziest thing, even though, yes, you could argue that there were little bits in his run that he could have tidied up or done. But it's like, what are we there at Rampage for? Like
for
years
sure.
past, one huge flip won the event, and everyone wasn't mad about that. So yeah, they've got a horrible, tough job, but the communication, there was contradictions, and I think the format of judging maybe needs to be relooked at as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I agree that it's just so oversaid that it's a hard job. But like I think what you're pointing out as well, and I agree with it, is let's avoid contradictions then, because we got to know like, okay, what are we here trying to accomplish? And if one year big huge sends are rewarded, and the next year super technical and like perfect spotless riding on smaller features with insane tricks is rewarded, what is the message, and how do the riders prepare, and how does a rider like Tom swing for the fences and think he has a winning run and then be surprised afterward? I want to circle back to Brandon as well. I would say that he is such a competitor. Just look at anything he's decided he wanted to compete in, and he wins. He dominates. He's that, but he's such a fan of the game. And so yeah, we're all just like from the bleachers interpreting his reaction. So there's no way to really know what's going on inside his head. But I genuinely think that he was just a big fan of all the stuff that had gone down that day. And he's such
Yeah.
a freaking hard worker as well. And I believe he's also a loyal friend. And so, his dudes busted their ass to make that line, and he busted his ass to make that line. And he's like, I want to get my run. And he chose a run with stuff that he would be proud of, stuff that would push him. He even said the favorite part of his run was that sea crab Indian air over that wild hip, which, wasn't the heaviest banger in the run, but it was just like he's an artist as well. And that was the part that he was most stoked about. And he said, oh, because it felt good. So he's out there, obviously as a competitor, a guy who's won 5 joyrides and now 5 rampages, but he's out there to be an artist as well. And all we can do is interpret what his reaction says about his thoughts. But then we can go back to previous years, see how the event was judged, and then have our opinions of whether or not there's consistency with what the judges are telling us based on where they're ranking these runs.
Yeah, well said. He is an artist. He's super humble as well for how amazing he is on a bike and a great human. Yeah, so exactly. We're interpreting what we've seen in the past, what they've judged in the past, what they're saying on site. And then, yeah, I think consistency, the riders deserve that. And they deserve no contradictions, to the point that define Rampage then, or define your judging scale. Like, put it out there then.
Yeah.
If it is evolving, the sport's evolving, then you almost need to communicate that. Because like you say, if Bass is like, okay, this has been rewarded in the past. I mean, Tom, referencing your brother. He's an incredible bike rider in his own right, but a different style bike rider. He's like, okay, well, this is one in the past, so I'm going to lay my life on the line here for 100 grand, as well as like accolades, and yes, do it for myself. It's a career-changing thing, like if you win Rampage. And then, yeah, he wasn't quite judged for it. And I'm not taking away anything a rider that's above him. I would never do that. I can't ride those obstacles, I never have. But yeah, I think it's fair. We're able to comment like, this is what happened in the past. This is what's happening this year. It's like, guys, come on.
I've got a thought. Yeah. I've got a thought experiment for it. So I'm trying to remember, and now with Emil not in the event this year, I didn't do a ton of prep and research him, because as you know, that's what we do, right? We research everything somebody's up to, what they did the previous year. But now I'm wishing I was super sharp on what he did last year. But as a thought experiment, if I remember correctly, he had an issue in his last run. And if I remember correctly, he truck driver to drop. He oppo whipped a cliff right into a regular tail up off of a cliff, into a really clean 3 variation off of a lip step down. And I think he had an issue. Yeah, there it is. I see it now. He had an issue on the very last hip. It was like an overspin 450, landed, sunk in, and flipped over. So if you are Tom and you're going, okay, well, last year, Zink's run won. Tom's riding style is very much in the same vein as Cameron Zink. So he's taking the information he was giving from the previous year, going, all right, that's what the judges want. I'm going to do that. I'm going to win. What's gnarlier than a backflip off of a huge step down? A front flip. Cool, I'll do that. And then I'll flat flip off of a huge drop. And now I've got a winning run based on what research and history has shown. So if now what we're seeing is true, and we had the results we had this year with Brandon doing an insanely technical slopestyle run with cleanliness to the 10th degree. If Emil landed his run last year, would he have beat Zink? Is that but we just don't know that because he didn't get to the bottom? What they're telling us about this year's results makes us think that if they are consistent, maybe Emil would have been way higher than we would have thought last year with his run.
Whoa. Yeah. Whoa. That was insane. That was insane going through your head and remembering Emil's run. That's some gnarly stuff.
It's all in there somewhere.
It always is. You just got to drag it out. Yeah, but I'm with that thought experiment. I feel like we're losing Rampage.
Right.
Why does Carl Strait have a single crown fork on his bike? Is that because of the bike sponsor, or because he wanted to innovate and do a tail? He wanted to do a tail whip.
I never thought I'd see Kyle with a single crown at Rampage. Yeah. Never.
No, he's just like the golden boy of Rampage and freaking winning the thing when he's 13. It's like, we have slopestyle. This is also what it's like. You have the core audience and the mainstream audience wanting Rampage. You would think it stays in the realm of how it started within reason, right?
And you can be Rampage with a single crown. You can be. There's nothing saying that you can't have the steepest, gnarliest shoot. This venue didn't really offer that up as much. Riders like Luke and Clemens were going for that at the top, and Brendan going for that, having some real steep shoots exposure. There wasn't as many shoots at this venue, and it's a lot of tricks, hammers. So as opposed to some venues, if you think about those shelf layers that offer up those big senders, this venue had, in a lot of cases, 2 of those. So a lot of riders were taking off of those massive shelves 2 times in their runs. There's a lot of trick cliffs. There's a lot of trick jumps, but it is also one of the steepest venues. But let's just say there is a venue that offers up a big gnarly gut shoot from the top, where then you can still have 2 gigantic sender cliff bands with 40 to 50 point to point step downs, and a a jump section, like a mini golf trick jump section, flattened out before the finish line. There is a world where you get somebody on a single crown doing everything: the gnarliest shoot, the gnarliest cliff trick, and the gnarliest technical lily pad trick, and the gnarliest jump trick. There is a world where a single crown wins Rampage with being like what you're kind of referring to as like what we know Rampage to be. There is a world where that is the case. I don't think by just putting a single crown on your bike and being down to do tailwhips and bar spins, you're any less Rampage. But I was surprised to see Kyle on a single crown. He had 2 identical bikes, one of them with a dual crown, one of them with a single crown. And he chose the single crown because there was a spot on the course where he's like, I'm guessing, I'm just like speaking for him right now, but I imagine he's like, a tail up on this is going to be way better than a Superman on this. It's going to score way higher. And if he doesn't feel like he's compromising his abilities on the bike by using that single crown fork, because single crown forks these days are so much more capable than they used to be, if there's no compromise, then a guy like Kyle, who is super good at tail ups, why not?
Yeah, well, there you go. That's why you are the expert on this podcast, on this topic. That was so well said. The venue does dictate some of the riding styles and what people focus on. And there you go, bringing 2 bikes, not giving up big mountain, but throwing in a tail whip, like the way you explain it. Okay, I can understand why you would do a tail whip there. You'd be a numbnuts to not understand that would probably score higher than a Superman or something else he would do with his other bike. Yeah, that's interesting. And then the venue dictates it. All right. So later on, we must wrap up with like, where do we go from now? But the dog in the room, the elephant in the room, like, yes, understand he's fan favorite, has been for a while. His dig team with their vlogs, it's fun, it's cool, gets the internet going. As devil's advocate, Rampage surely is also about creativity, having a one unique line where no one really shares anything. Like you've built the whole thing. Does he get scored down because that canyon was used the year before and it's not as exciting? Because like other than that, I'm trying to find reasons to score down Brendan when he gave us Rampage. He kind of why we tune in. That's unique. That's features that no one else would probably want to ride. Yes, other riders could. I'm not downplaying other riders' skill sets, but I saw some riders peeking down Geordie's chute and maybe wouldn't want to have a go. He's so technically gifted that if I hear he makes it look easy and that's a bad thing, like, no. You can't say that on live TV. That's like saying Semenuk makes it look easy. That's why you say things look easy when the score is so high and you're like, but that looked so easy. That's to defend why the score is so high. Yep. So I'm a little bit lost there. I'm
with you on that for sure. And my role in the event, in the booth, is to look at what's being done and imagine why the judges did their thing. A lot of people get it mixed up. They talk to me as if I'm a judge, so you're a judge. What do you think? I'm like, I'm not a judge,
No, you need to give your opinion, even if it's against the judging.
Yeah, I would never be a judge. That's just where I stand on that. But yeah, I do have opinions and I can give my opinions. I think, people were bummed last year when Brendan got 4th as well. And in that scenario, you're like, okay, he got 4th because this, and this happened. And people, were sending it big tricks off of huge cliffs. Where did he end up this year? I almost want to pull up the results. 11th? I thought it was 9th. He ended up in 11th?
No, it's
so. All right, 11th, are you looking at it? Can you tell me who was ahead of him? Maybe I'll just bring it up too.
No, I've got it. It's like, we have to talk about this. Like, are you telling me he got 11th? You can't tell me he got 11th with that run. Oh, and just
Exactly.
in the
So
comment
if
section, referring to his previous run at that site, getting a higher score, scores to me are placeholders. We're talking 11th, and last time
oh
he got
yeah,
4th. Like 76 versus the last time he got 86, they're irrelevant. They're unfortunately just a way to placehold positions. That's kind of what judges have told me anyway.
for sure.
So he's got 11th behind Carl Strait, Ethan Nell, Adolf, Carson, Thomas. I mean, dude, these runs started getting heavy. Don't get me wrong. Like, everyone that's listening, not taking away. There was more depth, more clean runs this year than ever before. Would you say that's a fair comment?
For sure. And I just brought up the results too because I do this every year. I get home, and for the next few days, I kind of just digest everything, and I come up with my my final takes on it, because I have my initial opinions, as we all do, but I think it takes a few days to really have a final evolved decision on what I really think and that I can defend with words. And what I always do, and it's kind of cool that we're doing it right now because you decided you
Yeah,
wanted
it's
to do this
really
podcast
cool.
so early, which is sick.
Let's do it
So
live.
this is my process. I bring up these results, and wherever there's contention in the comments, I look at that person, I adjust the color on my monitor first, and then I look at who's ahead of them. So Brendan, I don't care about the numbers, like you say. I don't look at that one bit. I look at Kyle beat him, Ethan beat him, Adolf beat him, Carson beat him, Janon beat him. So first, let's just talk about my thoughts on Brendan's run. I think it's important to note when somebody is building their line earlier in the week, how unlikely their things are to work, or like how impressed you are that they're biting them off. And Brendan always has that. He's always got something you're like, oh God, that's going to be a lot of work. So things like jumping up onto the rock, that's creative, it's unique, and that's what everybody loves. I feel like his run, it appeals to people who ride bikes the most because it is unique, it's creative. We love, variety in our riding, and it appeals to us because we're like, that's something that makes me want to go ride. If he hasn't flipped off of a huge cliff or threed off of a huge cliff, well, just objectively speaking for Rampage, that's obviously really scary to do. But flow, interpretation of the mountain, and overall impression are categories, and those are categories that he fills super well. So Jordy's drop, that thing looks so sketchy at the beginning of the week, and you're like, yeah, who wants a piece of that? Obviously, you like build super hard and make it less sketchy, but still, that's hard work. And in the context of trying to come up with a well-rounded run, he's got a canyon gap that he flipped, so that's heavy.
Sketchy, and it's sketchy,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's technical and big enough.
For sure. Small margin for error.
Yeah.
I think if you're trying to figure out something that he's lacking, it's probably like one of those big shelf-to-shelf senders. But I don't think he'd be playing toward his strengths by finding one of those big shelf-to-shelf senders. People are threeing off of those. People are flat flipping off of one of those. So it would be not the best decision for him to go that way. He's not going to do better by going and doing that because he's not going to flat flip off of it. He's not going to three drop off of it. With him getting fourth place last year, I don't have those results up right now. I feel like it would be sick for him to get a podium one of these years. I know that's what everybody wants, but there's so many people flipping off of huge cliffs and threeing off of huge cliffs with smooth runs that are also well-rounded that he just hasn't cracked into that podium spot. It's a tough pill to swallow. It sticks in my throat too, everybody at home, for that to be 11th. And should he have maybe beat Kyle? Kyle's big blunder in his run is that tail up, but it was also kind of one of the coolest parts in his run where he, tried the tail up in a consequential spot. He got his feet back on the pedals. Do you score that as a blunder or do you score that as a save? Off of the big shelf-to-shelf drop, he's doing a suicide no-hander, which isn't a big trick on that, right? Didn't he? So did he suicide the flat drop after the tail up, or did he suicide Price is Right? Do you remember?
I don't remember, so I can't comment on that. I guess the contradictions are coming out because if Tom didn't like have the cleanest full run or didn't have enough tricks in other places, then Kyle Strait objectively blundered the tail whip, so it wasn't as clean as it could have been, you know.
Right.
So that's kind of a challenge to see that score where it is, you know.
I guess without like rambling on and on, I also love watching Brendan ride. I also feel in the beginning of the week that he's bit off a lot, and these are going to be gnarly builds. I think everybody loves the story, and I love and loves the relatability of his riding, even though nobody would do it or could do it the way that he does it. I think what it comes down to is like some of the riders above him, like Adolf, flipping Price is Right. All right, well, that's something on par with what won the year before. Carson, flipping technical step downs, maybe not that much size on his upper step down flip, but unique line choice in the same way as Brendan has unique line choice. 3 and off the drop, almost throwing it away, and 415 and getting mousetrapped. Like, now when we're getting into comparing like Brendan's run to Carson's run, you're like, okay, like, is anybody out there going to say, oh, Brendan got robbed because Carson beat him? Like, there's a heavy argument that Carson should have beat him. He's doing gnarly stuff, and he's linking it together with aggression and fluidity. So I know it's pretty unanimous in the comments that Brendan got robbed. There's probably a couple arguments where he should have been higher up, but people were really sending. And in some of these cases, it makes sense that people beat Brendan, regardless of how many people there are in the world out there saying that Brendan should have beat a lot of those people. And me saying that doesn't mean that I don't agree with a lot of you, that is one of the most fun runs to watch, and nobody else would do it the way he did it. And to ride down that chute with, if you look at that chute that he rode, these kind of carving right-hander across, when you go up there and look at it, you're like, where's Brendan going? He hasn't finished his line yet, but he just mashes through it. Like, that deserves a lot of cred on the judges' scorecard as well. But how do you weight that with people who lean back off of gigantic step down features and spun off of gigantic step down features? Is that not Rampage 2? Spinning off a huge cliff or flipping off a huge cliff? Is that not Rampage 2? It is, right?
It 100% is. That's why I like your process of coming back and you know, rewatching the runs and then trying to rank them. And that's maybe where it's like, unfortunately, you got to give the judges more time. Like, his score came in so quickly because they
Let's
just
talk about that. Yeah. How quickly did it come in?
Okay, I have. Did you see?
Yes, you have it. Let's do this.
Do you have Ewan's? I have to give.
Ewan.
Ewan. That. Yeah.
I saw it.
Not to be a conspiracy theorist. So go check Action Sports Medical. He was the doctor for Crankworks. It only took 2 minutes 54 seconds from crossing the line to scores going on screen. That's Brendan. My quick sample of 6 other run one judging times returned an average closer to 5 minutes. The next closest was a little over 4. It seems just a bit arbitrary. If you're a proper nerd, and I can complete the data set and publish later when I do a rewatch. So it's just fun to ramble on about it. What you've just done was quite interesting. You're like, yeah, I might go ahead of that one. Okay, cool. Maybe not. Maybe go ahead of that one. Okay, I can nitpick that run. Then I got to Carson. Oh, we're going to spend way longer than we have on this podcast. Maybe at the Carson. Maybe it's at the Kurt Sorgi. Maybe it's
the
not.
Next is Janon, who had a really steep technical drop with a wild run out that had won the event in the past, and a big 3 drop and a front flip. So like a line that scores high on its own with some heavy moves that would score high on their own. Brendan's line it has to score well in the creativity, use of mountain, and execution category. And then when you start measuring things, it probably goes like, oh man, he's gonna have to like really ride it fast to be able to make up for that, or he's gonna have to do a couple tricks to make up for that. And he did. He rode it fast, except for the parts that are mandatory to like set up for, and so that's why people are pissed. And so
we understand why. We're agreeing. Like, we're also pissed. You've just got to also get some of it objectively. He's underjudged. I think that's even almost fact. Not just the feelings, not just the comments. I think I'm happy to say he was underjudged. I'll have the beer with the guys I know well from the judging tower. It's no disrespect. You can get things wrong. It's a judged event. The other thing I don't know if...
Well, biggest drop on his line is 24 feet vert. So, okay, put that on the scale, the balancing scale. 24 feet
like
vert.
Amplitude.
Not that big. Can we all agree that that's not that big? If you consider that Brandon did an opposite tail up off of a 26-foot drop, which is also not that big, but it's on a lily pad and it's an opposite tail up, meaning he has to land with his feet perfect and then get off the ground again. So if we're just comparing those two, we're saying that if it's in the 24 to 26 foot range and you want to score high on it, you might need to, in 2024, do something as mega as an opposite tail whip. But then fill it up with the fact that this is a really unique feature, a rock that you're now jumping up onto. You have to stop on, and if you fall off the left side, it's really going to give you a shitty day. Okay, well, they start leveling out a little bit like that. And then the canyon, how far is the canyon? I wish I knew that off the top of my head. It's probably like 45 feet.
Yeah, I think.
But he flipped it.
If not longer. I think the thing that hurt him is he did it last year. I mean, when the event was there, but prior. If that was a new build and a new exciting canyon.
Well, then also Ethan flipped.
I'm not saying it should be like that, but it just seems like the new big canyon, which was huge, which we need to give credit to your brother and Tom Eisted. That obviously is going to get the judges going because it was bigger. It's the biggest step down canyon vibe, and the run out seemed like a roll of the dice if it was going to work.
In Rampage,
you could do the canyon. You could do the canyon perfect, and you might not ride that one out. It seemed.
Yeah, in Rampage, if you're going to straight air something, then it's got to be something like that. That is not only big, but has a mandatory requirement of insane bike skill to ride out the landing. So I'm going to circle back real quick. We're going to come back to my brother and Tom's step down canyon gap. But the timing thing, I want Ewan to go and crunch the numbers on that because, and I want to open up the rule book because I think that the judges are given 3 minutes to put the score in. Okay, the judges are given 3 minutes to put their score in. So if a couple of the things that Ewan said are correct, well, if the judges took 2 minutes and 54 seconds to put their score in, they were 6 minutes away from going over limit. So if that's correct, that's okay. But if it's also correct that the judges took 5 minutes on somebody else, then that's not okay. So we got to go and find out if both of those statements are correct. We got to fact check these. And it sounds like Ewan is down to fact check. So let's fact check him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've made a hell of a lot of mistakes in my life and will continue to make a lot of mistakes. I also think, we mustn't forget the big canyon. What do they call it? The BFC. So,
can we swear on your podcast?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
The big fucking canyon.
Fucking canyon. They deserve a big fucking swear word for that crazy thing. I'm just like replaying Tom's bucking bronco moment out of that thing. Dude. Oh my goodness. That's insane, man.
So
Not to mention the one where he ejected. He's like a cat, man. Eisted is a real life cat when he falls off a bike.
In slopestyle, I think it's like, unfortunately, like maybe 8 times this year in runs, he has done like tricks like a twister and just got out sliding and stood up and went, in some cases he just stands up and does a backflip. So he gets out of things better than anybody. He makes
crashes look too easy.
Yeah, like he's on a water slide or something. But there's boulders everywhere. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, what do you want to know about that thing? That thing was insane.
Well, I mean, I think it's an awesome story. Your brother's come back. I think it's awesome. Tom Eisted as a rookie, getting in. How did they even decide to collab on that thing? How does that work? Maybe shed some light into some of those inside infos.
It is a cool story. So Tyler had seen that feature back in 18 or 19 when the competition was at that venue. He saw it and went, ha, look at like a canyon gap, kind of like that, like as if. And in the back of his mind, it was always kind of just sitting there. And because he lives out there, he anytime he's chilling at home, he can look out and just, the mind wanders. He scours that area all the time in his side by side and on hikes looking for big features. He had remembered that big feature always. So when he heard that the event was going to go back to that venue, he's like, I wonder if I should go and look at that, canyon gap once we get back there for Scout Day. He's like, I think it was big though. It was like, it was probably like 45 feet, but also with, like heavy exposure and, down as well as out. And he got back to it and he's like, oh God, it's way bigger than I remembered. And, but committed to it. And that's the hard part is like, okay, we're going to start building this thing. And once you commit to it, you're like, all right, if this doesn't go well, I don't have a backup plan. If you go over there, there is no backup plan. Once you line up to that thing, as we saw in Eisted's first run, if you mess up the run-in, well, you got to stop or you're going to find yourself in the middle of that thing. And Tom had to slow down and stop, which like somebody who's so mentally strong and like with so much go for it as he has, that just goes to show how perfect you have to be on the run-in, and on the run out, they didn't know if that was going to work. And in both Tom's, who guinea pigged it, badass, and Tyler's first runs, they both did not make the run out. And in the final day of practice, Tom barely made the run out. And you might as well even just throw in that clip right now because it's like anybody who loves mountain biking, especially if you love World Cup downhill, like look at that. The fact that he stayed on the bike on that was sick. He's a slopestyle guy who came from BMX and he made that run out. Like that dude's got a whole lot more bike skill than anybody would have ever thought. The fact that even as good as he is at crashing and bailing, he held on to that, didn't bail. That was sick. But that is one of those features where you can get away with straight airing it because it is so heavy on its own.
No, it is. And just seeing those runouts, I mean, that's a viral clip for Rampage right there. Just like buck wild as I've ever seen it. And then the one where he crashed, we just like jumps down the side of a freaking chasm there. That was pretty insane. But as we wrap up, we haven't spoken much about gods yet. We mentioned big threes and flips. What about huge double flip where he sort of paused after the first one? Yes, it's on the lower, what did you call it, mini golf section where it's like the jump section. But man, we can't not chat about how epic that run was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought it was the winning run. And when I saw that Brandon was going back up, I'm like, oh boy, not so fast. And then, like I say, when the score came in, I was like, really? Like, surprised. So me saying that, if we're going to dig back deeper into that, is also the same thing as me saying that Godziak's run was really tough to beat. If you're talking about just the bullet points, a front flip off the start drop complemented by a double flip on the final drop. So those are some pretty good bookends to a Rampage run. But in a year like this year where people are sending it so hard, you got guys like Tom Van Steenbergen doing historic front flip step down moves, then you got to fill the middle with some stuff and check that overall impression box. And I think he did exactly that as well. He flipped Price is Right, and it looked perfect. Like he was chill, his rotation, like all of the execution was immaculate. Does that come back to bite somebody? Like if they were a little sketchier, would the judges like that? The judges spend so much time out there. I think they need to know, and they do know, but they made their decisions the way they did, that all that stuff, all the connectors was so pass or fail, a lot of narrow stuff, a lot of really tight corners into step down flips. Even the smaller step down flip in his line was technical because of the run in to it. And then his 3-drop, yes, it's a little bit smaller than the 3-drop that Carson did, but it's technical. He's coming off on an angle. He has to over-rotate more than a 3 to connect to it. And then he needs all the speed he can get because he's going to double flip afterwards. I think that was a really tough run to beat right there. And he made everything look way too easy when he was, and I'm saying that in a good way. Like, he should score better for making it look easy. Like, if we're going to talk about Brendan, making that look easy is a good thing.
I understood what you meant there. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, in the middle of the run, I'm like, oh, he is on it. I know what he has coming, and I think he's going to land everything just by body language, the way the run started. I'm surprised he didn't win the competition. Yeah.
No, I mean, well said, man. Like, it's just, there were so many heavy hitters and so many heavy hitting runs. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold here.
Hay fever.
Dude, you remember me and my hay fever? Yeah, I get hay fever in the change of season in Europe, but this one I think's a little bit worn out on lack of sleep with the little one and being away.
That's why you're sick.
Yeah.
4 months.
I was at US Open as well. Yeah. But,
were you sick?
No, dude, you've been great breaking it down and respectful to all the riders with an opinion. I mean, that's what podcasts are for. We allowed opinions. And I know what Jeff Gullovich meant. It just didn't come across great. Like, I know what he meant. I know what he meant by saying it, just at the context, and it just didn't come across well. So respect to him if he happened to listen. Or
when he said it, I was like, oh, shit. I know what he means too. I know what he means too, but I was like, oh, shit, he's going to get roasted for that.
Yeah. And I've been roasted online. You've been, we are in the booth. You're on live TV and you've got to make things up. It's not scripted. So
I think the thing that
credit to him as well. Like, if he hears this, I'm saying it with respect. He probably knows it was a blunder as well.
Yeah, I would say, like, just 2 things for people who watch Rampage and they're passionate about it. I think it's awesome that people care so much. There's 2 things that are hard as a viewer. It's knowing what things really look like up close in person, and then it's also in instances like that where Jeff said something like that, knowing probably where he's actually coming from and the way it would have been more understood with a beer face to face. As I think when he made people think that the judges underscored Brendan because he made it look easy, how horrible that would be if that was the case. And I don't think that's what he meant.
No, I think he was trying to say it as a compliment, and he was out of things to say because they kept going back to him, and he's like, I've said what I can say with what I've heard over here. Like, he's not in the conversation for 5 minutes. So, Cam, this has been epic, man. I learned a lot. I love your process. I think we might have to make it a bit of a tradition, I think, going forward, if you will. But
let's do it.
Props to you. And there was a world's first because I haven't seen you in a baby blue shirt. You look good. It doesn't look bad on you, dude. I'm used to seeing you in
shirt.
black, and maybe a gray.
I love that shirt. Taylor Sage texts me and he goes, "Who dressed you?"
Yeah, it's like, did your wife pack your bag?
No, I love that shirt. I wish I could have worn it both days, but I think it's like, this guy never does laundry. What's going on? But I wanted to dig up. I just didn't have time to do it. I wanted to dig up an old shot from like 06 where my favorite contest day shirt was the same color. So I've like always loved that color of blue.
Send it to me.
I have one right now. I'll
send it to me when you find it.
Cut it in.
Right. Cam, everyone should check. You still ripping the YouTube, obviously. Just at Cam McCaul on YouTube, or what's up there?
On YouTube, but yeah, go check it out anyways, because as soon as I film stuff, that's where it goes. So check it out. Thanks for checking it out, and thanks for telling people.
Yeah, and he's on Instagram, and dude, thanks for what you do. You and Regatkin and Salema. I mean, gee, that's so cool. Someone like Salema at Rampage is also pretty amazing, and Tina Dixon as well. She does a great job. So I didn't even know she came from ski, right? She's got like X Games medals, snowboard, and she's got X Game medals and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know that's the best thing about Rampage too. Is, I mean, we have people like that in the booth, and they're there because they love it, which is sick. And then we have athletes out there watching from other sports who are so accomplished in their realm, and they're there because they love it. It's truly unique. It's truly special, and yeah, we're so lucky to have something like that in our sport where we get to show it to the world.
Well, there you go. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Cam for coming on. You know what to do. Make sure you follow us on YouTube if you haven't. It's at Moving the Needle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I think the best you can do is leave a review. Till the next one, peace.